from the studios of Farm Journal Broadcast.
Coming up on Ag Day, Washington leaders discuss the renewable fuel standard, plus a mega merger gets the green light. In agribusiness, the growing livestock sector.
Well, we have had very strong demand, and that's related to the strength of the U.S. economy. A lot of people working, low unemployment, a lot of jobs, and rising wage rates.
And these Illinois 4-Hers learn life lessons about helping feed those in need.
Ag Day, brought to you by the Chevy Silverado, the most dependable, longest-lasting full-size pickups on the road.
Good morning, I'm Clinton Griffiths. The president continuing to focus on the renewable fuel standard as competing interests vie for attention from the White House. The president hosting another biofuels meeting Monday afternoon. Participants including EPA Administrator Scott Pruitt and USDA Secretary Sonny Perdue. The cabinet officials reviewing a list of potential changes to the renewable fuel standard. The options ranging from capping prices of renewable identification numbers or RINs to allowing the sale of E15 year-round, or possibly even kicking the ball back to Congress for a legislative fix. Farm state legislators say they're also concerned about the EPA issuing an increasing number of waivers for small refiners.
It's a backdoor approach to accomplishing what a cap on RINs would do, and there's no way I can prove that that's the motivation of Pruitt, but let me tell you what the law says. Under really hardship cases, then a waiver can be granted. But one of these companies made $1.5 billion profit last year. That's not a hardship case, and yet they're getting some waivers. So this has raised a whole new issue.
Portland, Indiana is home to an ethanol plant for the energy company Poet. It began operations back in 2007. Staff members say a cap on RINs would limit future expansion and the incentive for biofuels in the marketplace.
A RIN cap is going to cap our ability for market expansion of E15 and higher level blends of ethanol, which is really going to go back and hurt the farmers' opportunities to sell their products to a consumer.
Crude oil prices are on the rise, and that has gasoline prices inching ever higher. According to the U.S. Energy Information Administration, average regular retail gas prices reaching $2.70 a gallon last week, the highest level since 2015. Many commodity markets starting the week on a positive footing following a softer tone from the president and administration officials regarding tariff action against China. Now, late last week, officials threatening an additional $100 billion in tariffs, but over the weekend, the tough talk was pulled back. Tweeting on Sunday, President Trump struck a hopeful note that China and the U.S. can reach a deal on a trade war. Quote, "President Xi and I will always be friends, no matter what happens with our dispute on trade," he wrote of his Chinese counterpart Xi Jinping, the current president in China, continuing, "China will take down its trade barriers because it's the right thing to do. Taxes will become reciprocal and a deal will be made on intellectual property. A great future for both countries," end quote. Meanwhile, China's Commerce Ministry spokesperson saying the U.S. has misjudged the situation and taken the wrong action, adding China is fully prepared and will take immediate action with major countermeasures if the U.S. releases a list of that additional $100 billion in tariffs. Now, traders say they'll be watching a speech today from Chinese President Xi Jinping for clues to the country's next steps. In a speech on Thursday, Politico saying that President Trump admitted publicly that his crackdown is causing U.S. farmers and ranchers to feel the pain. He also says steps will be taken to address that reality. The president directing Ag Secretary Sonny Perdue to use his broad authority to implement a plan to protect farmers and agricultural interests. Perdue telling Politico that he would use all of USDA's authorities to ensure U.S. ag interests are protected. Earlier in the week, Perdue saying the prospect of an extended trade war might require Congress to take some extraordinary measures in the next farm bill. The USDA can also utilize funds from the Commodity Credit Corporation to stabilize and support farm income and prices. The tensions between the U.S. and China is already changing the flow of commodities around the world. USDA says more than 450,000 tons of soybeans were sold to undisclosed destinations last week. Traders say it appears the shipments are headed for the EU. which would make it the largest purchase of U.S. beans by EU nations in some 15 years. Meanwhile, in other trade news, NAFTA talks entering hyperspeed as leaders from all three nations push negotiators to finalize the deal quickly. The Mexican foreign minister says he's not ruling out a quick ending. President Trump saying Thursday he expects the three nations to have something to announce on NAFTA very soon. According to the Wall Street Journal, the U.S. Department of Justice has approved Bayer's acquisition of Monsanto after the companies agreed to sell certain assets to gain antitrust approval. The agreement comes just weeks after the European Union's approval of the deal, which also required several divestments. However, there are a few countries left to grant approval before the companies are allowed to legally merge. Secretary Perdue and USDA announcing their nearly $2.5 billion in hurricane and wildfire aid for disasters from 2017. Now, that money will go to help victims of Hurricanes Harvey, Irma, and Maria, and those impacted by the many wildfires last year. The USDA says it's working to develop a system for affected producers to get that disaster assistance, and the funds authorized by Congress are part of the new 2017 Wildfires and Hurricane Indemnity Program authorized in the Bipartisan Budget Act of 2017. USDA says sign-ups for the new program will begin no later than mid-July. Weekend snows, cold weather, and rain has crop progress all but stalled in many parts of the country. USDA releasing its latest report late Monday. The nation's winter wheat crop seeing continued decline in its condition rating this week. 30%, now good to excellent. That's a 2-point drop in just a week's time and the second lowest winter wheat rating on record dating back to 1986 for this point in April. The Southern Plains really continuing to struggle. Only 14% rated good to excellent in Texas. It's 10% in Oklahoma, just 13% in Kansas. Last week's cold snap and subsequent warm-up is expected to reveal some major damage in pockets of winter wheat country. Temperatures dipping below freezing, stressing the crop. Agronomists say some areas were behind in maturity because of a lack of moisture, which may help limit damage there. As I mentioned, the snow, it's still looking a lot like January out there. Mike Hoffman has an update on those April snow conditions in today's Crop Comments. Good morning, Mike.
Good morning, Clinton. Well, listen to this. Ron Haas of Gilman, Illinois, says this is the 5th time it has snowed in April this year on his operation. Ron says he doesn't know when he will start to plant corn. He's not alone. Steve Fallure showing us there is also snow in Attica, Indiana. Both say planting is out of sight for right now. And taking a look at the wind speed forecast, not much wind as we start the day today, a little bit in the western portions of Oregon. As we head through the day, though, it will become windier in the west and even in parts of Wyoming and Montana, a little bit windier through the central plains. And then tomorrow, we will see those winds pick up, especially in the afternoon, as you can see there from the central Rockies, actually even into parts of California and Nevada, all the way into the southern Great Lakes. So lots of wind by tomorrow afternoon. We'll check the rest of your forecast coming up in just a few minutes, but first, here are some hometown temps.
Save time each day and receive the latest market prices directly to your cell phone with market updates. It makes it effortless to stay aware of shifting market prices. Just text Markets 8 to 31313 to get started.
All right, when we come back, we'll talk livestock and the growing competition in the protein sector. And later, these Illinois 4-H'ers are marking a milestone as they pack meals for people in need.
With a uniquely powerful formulation of proven ingredients, Resicor corn herbicide gives you extraordinary power.
Who wants dessert?
At least when it comes to weeds.
In agribusiness, grain markets, and especially wheat, seeing a positive day at the CME. Let's get details now from the floor.
Today in soybeans, they finally rebounded. The tariff wars have really settled down somewhat, and now it gave the market some opening to start to get back to the technical business of rallying. We really have all bullish fundamental news, and we expect that the market's going to start to swing back into where it was before this tariff talks began. The corn was higher. It seems that the futures are finally finding their footing a little bit. The demand shows that there's a steady improvement in the corn basis up to 2.5 cents. Wheat today was soaring, and I think that certainly there has been overflow buying into the corn and soybeans because of the soaring wheat futures. They really jumped up on weather in the plains, and they expect that, you know, now that this freezing temperatures are threatening the winter wheat. Not like we've had, you know, this hot and dry temperatures for the last 2 months. But finally, you know, somebody has let the bulls out, and they've let them loose, and the market really rallied up double digits, really strong. Today in cattle, the market was really choppy. It actually opened and went much higher, and we had a nice little rebound, but some selling came in and kind of pushed it down a little bit. It seems that the cash cattle has been struggling somewhat, and that's what really brought the market back. That's all from the floor at the CME Group here in Chicago. I'm Virginia McGathy.
Less expensive grains and an improving global economy helping to drive expansion in the livestock sector. Tyne Morgan has more in today's analysis from the road.
Here now with Chris Hurt of Purdue University. Chris, we look at this growing protein sector. I mean, we continue to get these inventory reports, these cattle on feed reports just show this growing herd overall. This year, do you think that supply will outpace demand, considering some of these demand concerns that we have on the table today?
Well, we have had very strong demand, and that's related to the strength of the U.S. economy. A lot of people working, low unemployment, a lot of jobs, and rising wage rates. Those are all positive to meat consumption. We've got a world that has an economy doing very well, and what that says, exports are doing very well. On the other hand, in 2017, last year, demand outweighed the supply increase. I think this year we're talking about the demand will not be strong enough to outweigh the supply increase. We're going to have 4 or 4+% more beef in the marketplace, 3.5 to 4% more pork, and about 2% more poultry. And what that says is while we have strong demand, we're probably going to sell it at lower prices than we did last year.
So what is your outlook for pork prices?
Well, in terms of live prices, we'd been talking at the start of the year around $53 on live hog prices. We thought costs would be around $50. That's reversed. We've seen higher corn and meal prices, so now we've got our costs up to about $53, and with these Chinese tariffs, we're now down to about $48, $49 on hogs. That's $4 to $5 a hundredweight of loss, $12, $13 a head of loss this year, shifted from a little profitability early in the year to some losses that we're anticipating now for 2018.
So do you think that entices contraction?
I think it does. Now again, the losses won't be big enough this spring and summer to force contraction, but as we get into the fall, we think, and winter time, we think we'll see losses $20 to $25 a head, and that's big enough to start stopping the expansion, leveling off the herd, or maybe even some contraction into 2019.
All right, Chris, thank you so much. We appreciate you joining us. Let's take a quick break here on Ag Day, and then we'll have a check of weather.
Your vote could help a community organization win $10,000 and send a farmer on a dream sports trip. Vote now and help make dreams come true at powertodomore.com. Sponsored by Resicor Corn Herbicide.
Welcome back to Ag Day. Meteorologist Mike Hoffman. Now, Mike, I know the calendar says spring, but goodness sakes, it's still snowing.
I know, and it's been one of those patterns that we just can't get out of it in much of the Corn Belt. But I see some hope down the road, all right? I'm going to show that to you on the jet stream. First of all, here's the national map. And we're starting today with a storm system off the North Carolina coast there, cold front down into northern Florida. Showers and thunderstorms with that feature. A little bit of snow on the north side of it, though. As you can see, parts of Pennsylvania, New York, eastern Great Lakes. Weak system diving into the northern part of the country, and we have 2 systems offshore of the west coast. The second one will show up here as we put the maps into motion, but you can see by later this afternoon the cold front's the only thing in the southeast left, with some showers and thunderstorms there as the main system is offshore, although it's still producing some snow in New England and a little bit of rain and snow with the warm front there across the western Great Lakes out west. We'll see the mainly rain, but a little bit of mountain snow in some of the highest elevations as you can see. And by tomorrow morning, that system will be moving through eastern Montana, the eastern system through the upper Great Lakes, both of them continue to push on off to the east. So most of the precipitation with those two features definitely through the northern tier of states. And this is a powerful storm system coming in for the middle of this week. That's late Wednesday with already some rain and mountain snows down into the Sierra Nevadas. Lots of wind with that system as well. Precipitation estimate, not a lot over the past 24 hours, but adding in the next 36. We'll add some more definitely in parts of Florida, and we'll add some light amounts through some of the northern tier of states. As you can see there, snowfall amounts past 24 hours. It's been some light amounts for the most part. Parts of Pennsylvania, New York, eastern Great Lakes. Adding in the next 36 hours, we'll add a little bit more with that system as it moves through the northern portion of New England, and we'll add some of the highest elevations of the Rockies, as well as a little bit of snow there moving across North Dakota into Minnesota. High temperatures this afternoon, 60s and 70s down south, so not ultra warm yet. Still 30s and 40s, Great Lakes into the northeast. Low temperatures tonight going to drop off into the 20s and 30s. Not too bad, Great Lakes in the northeast, 50s down south. And you can see as we head through the day tomorrow, getting pretty hot in the southwest, and the warmth starts to go in all the way into the central plains for a change. And here's why. We've had this big cutoff low over Hudson Bay for 3 or 4 weeks now. That's still there, as you can see, through most of this week, but then we get a cutoff over the middle of the country. So we get a brief warm up, then a cool down, but look, the low up north is gone. That means we're going to have systems coming from west to east and no direct shots of Arctic air. That's a look across the country. Now let's take a look at some local forecasts. First of all, Twin Falls, Idaho, mix of clouds and sunshine, high temperature of 64 degrees today. Carthage, Missouri, partly sunny, rather cool, high of 59. And Greenfield, Massachusetts, cloudy with just a bit of rain or snow, high of 44.
When we come back, immigration enforcement picks up. That's next in our Dairy Report. And later, feeding those in need. 4-H'ers in the land of Lincoln packing meals for the hungry.
Ag Day, brought to you by new Delaro fungicide for corn and soybeans. Achieve personal best yields.
In our Dairy Report, the National Milk Producers Federation calling on the FDA to take action against Bolthouse Farms. The Campbell Foods owned business sells a drink made from pea powder that's labeled as milk. NMPF says the beverage is unfairly and illegally skirting federal regulations, adding the company is ignoring FDA standards that say milk and other dairy products must be sourced from animals, not plants. Immigration and Customs Enforcement has arrested 97 workers at a meatpacking plant in Tennessee. That makes it the single largest workplace raid in a decade. Officials say it began as a criminal raid due to large cash withdrawals from the bank, but turned into an immigration operation when ICE officials executed a criminal search warrant at the meatpacking plant in Granger County, Tennessee. Immigration and Customs Enforcement say 10 immigrants were arrested on federal criminal charges, 1 arrested on state charges, and 86 detained for being in the country illegally. Coming up, these Illinois 4-H'ers are giving back to people in need.
In the Country, sponsored by Kubota. Tractors, hay tools, utility vehicles, mowers, and more. Visit KubotaUSA.com today.
As long as I can remember, 4-H has been a great way to raise civic-minded kids and a good way to give back to the community. And 4-H'ers in Illinois are learning those lessons, helping prepare meals for people in need. University of Illinois' Todd Gleason has a story.
The weather was cold for the beginning of April, but the hearts were all warm. 4-H members and volunteers gathered in a shed to create and package up meals. It's something they've been doing under the guidance of Illinois Extension's Bill Million since 2013.
That time was the same year we launched our 4-H Feeding and Growing Our Communities initiative here in Illinois, and meal packaging has been one of the integral components of engaging 4-H members, 4-H clubs, and communities in activities that address hunger and food insecurity here in Illinois.
Well, that's no small accomplishment. Feeding America puts the number of food insecure in the United States at about 13.5%, with far more than 1 million of those in Illinois. That means they're not sure when or where they'll get their next meal. And now, 1 million of those meals have been packaged up for them by kids like Marshall Bowman. He says the volunteer work is a good thing to do.
because they're giving people food so they can live.
Marshall and his friends in Morgan County packaged up about 12,000 meals in an hour. It's an event that's been happening all across Illinois for the past 5 years. In those 12,000 meals, by the way, was the 1 millionth package. And so very much more, says Bill Million.
Oh, absolutely. They're learning leadership. They're learning civic engagement. They're learning to be able to work together as a team. They're learning to be able to follow directions. We have Cloverbud members, the youngest audience we have in the Illinois 4-H program, with us tonight. And it's at that age where they're beginning to learn cooperation, teamwork, being able to follow directions, and at the end of the evening have a good feeling that they were able to help somebody else.
A somebody else that needed their help. In Jacksonville, I'm Illinois Extension's Todd Gleason.
Thanks, Todd. That's all the time we have this morning. We're sure glad you tuned in. For Mike Hoffman and all of us here at AgDay, I'm Clinton Griffiths. Have a great day.